For Session Update, I'm Shannon Lurkey. The Committee on Education met to hear testimony in support of the Teacher Shortage Act on Tuesday morning, March 22nd. Administrators from around the state spoke of staffing challenges faced by their districts. Committee Chair Chuck Weger said that passing this act is the #1 priority of the committee. Here are some clips from that hearing.
I had the pleasure of meeting with Denise Dietrich from the Minnesota School Boards Association this summer over coffee, and we were talking about this school teacher shortage, which a relatively new phenomenon compared to the, when I entered the teaching profession back in 1984, when social studies teachers, a dime a dozen, 200 applicants for every opening, and very competitive to get in. That was true, for elementary teachers, social studies, PE teachers, even up until maybe even a few years ago. But because of a number of things, which I'm sure we'll address here, whether it's about people entering the profession, about the number of people that are retiring and leaving the profession, or people that don't even stay in the profession. So we were kind of, she had a list of about 50, 60 things on her list about where she had heard from folks that saying, how can we address the teacher shortage issue? And so what we have left here is probably maybe kind of a short-term and long-term approach about things that we think can work to maybe address this particular issue. By no means the grand solution, perhaps, but we think we are addressing some key issues in terms of the pipeline of teachers coming in, and especially supporting those teachers that are already in the profession and possibly making it more attractive for even more people to enter the profession.
And on behalf of the 332 school boards across the state, we want to thank you today for tackling this really serious topic of teacher shortage. This is a growing issue nationally as well as in the state of Minnesota. And it is one of the highest priorities for school board members across the state because they are fully aware of their responsibility for ensuring that we have the highest quality staff in every public school in the state of Minnesota. In the past, this issue of teacher shortage has been referred to as the perfect storm, or some call it the silent crisis. We can call it whatever we like, but the bottom line is that we are not generating and retaining enough teachers, and especially teachers of diverse backgrounds in the state of Minnesota. And today, throughout this hearing, you will hear some testimony and some personal experiences and some facts that will hopefully motivate you to pass the Teacher Shortage Act. And so with that, I would like to first of all point out that MSBA has provided 2 documents in your packets. The first one looks something like this, and this is a report that MSBA has put together on teacher shortage. It outlines the problem and the solutions. The second is a green handout that looks like this, and we hope that you look at it and recognize it as a chalkboard. But on the front of the chalkboard, what it is facts that equal up to an unequal equation. You add all those facts together, and what it equals up to is a shortage of teachers in Minnesota. I would just like to highlight a couple of those facts. Fact number 1. The number of teaching licenses issued in the state of Minnesota has declined by 7%, according to the most recent supply and demand report, which looks back for 5 years. This is a decline across all areas of licensure. And although that is concerning, something even more concerning is that if you go back to 2004, there is actually a 44% decline in completers in the state of Minnesota. And then you add on top of that a 10% attrition rate, and we have a teacher shortage. And this really becomes troubling when we add on top of that the millions of dollars the state has spent on STEM initiatives, career and college ready. If we are trying to promote that as a state in order to create a strong 21st century economy in the state of Minnesota, and yet we don't have enough STEM teachers in our classrooms, that is a problem. And if you really want to look at the breakdown of the different types of licensure and the shortages, it is on the first page of this report. Fact number 2, with fewer students entering the profession and completing the programs, the licensure, there are fewer teacher prep programs around the state. This is especially true in the area of special education. And in fact, we have gone from, according to the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Higher Education, we have gone from 3 shortage areas in the year 2000 to 27. And those 3 initially in the year 2000 were in special education. And that tells us that we need to take a look at our institutions of higher education and how accessible are our special education licensure programs. Fact number 3 is that border states are becoming more creative and aggressive in recruiting and retaining teachers. If you look at this report in the sidebar there, you will see what 4 other states have been doing recently in order to address teacher shortage. And so what that tells us in Minnesota is that we need to be more aggressive and more creative in attracting our teachers and retaining them. In other words, what it could mean is we're training our teachers here in the state of Minnesota so that they can go to another state. Fact number 4, student enrollment has slightly increased while the demographics in our classrooms are changing. White students are declining and students of ethnicity are increasing by approximately 1% per year of the last 5 years of the supply and demand report. This change in demographics is not strictly an urban issue, as many of us would like to believe. It is happening everywhere, rural, suburban, and urban school districts. Case in point, Minneapolis has a 66% ethnicity, Austin 40%, Wilmer 53%, Brooklyn Center 77%. So once again, this is not just an urban issue. And so what this demonstrates is that our current teaching staff does not reflect the population that they serve. The current demographic does contribute to barriers that children of color are assimilating at a very early age. And we should be providing school boards the resources to build from within their own school district to implement and plan grow your own programs in order to create their own diverse teaching staff across the state. So let's be perfectly honest. What this also tells us is that what we have been doing in the past has not worked. We need to try something different. If we add all these facts together, hopefully it tells us we need to pass the Teacher Shortage Act, and it is our responsibility as a state to stimulate, motivate, and graduate the next generation of teachers. With that, Mr. Chairman, I will conclude my comments.
I'll share information about our school district that provides compelling evidence of the need for legislative intervention in the efforts to attract and retain teachers. And I'll urge you to take courageous action on behalf of our children to ensure equitable student achievement. The need for a more racially diverse teaching workforce is critical. We know that a more racially diverse teacher workforce will help us to reduce teacher turnover, improve academic outcomes for students of color and all Minnesota students. We know that it will help ensure high expectations for students of color and reduce implicit bias and provide role models for students of all races. To help you really see the local impact of decisions in this area, I'd like to share some information about Osseo area schools to provide context. Please refer to the front page of the handout. I'll begin by referencing the slide that shows a map of our school district. Osseo area schools is the 5th largest district in the state of Minnesota. We serve 20,000 students. We serve the 3rd highest number of students of color in the state of Minnesota. We serve the 2nd highest number of Asian and Pacific Islander students. We're a racially isolated school district. We have 12 racially segregated schools. The city of Brooklyn Park was recently identified as a racially concentrated area of poverty, the first area to be designated as such outside of Minneapolis and St. Paul. I offer this context to illustrate the idea that the conversation about attracting and retaining teachers of color is not a polite discourse of political correctness in our communities. Rather, it's a critical matter of disparity in academic outcomes. Next, please see the slide titled Free and Reduced Lunch Eligibility by Site. I want to show you how that disparity shows up in our schools. This bar graph shows the variability among District 279 schools by socioeconomic status. Each bar represents a school. The blue color shows the percent of students from low-income families. You can see that some schools have very few students from low-income families and that some schools serve primarily students from low-income families. Next, see the slide titled Racial Composition by Site. This bar graph shows the variability among District 279 schools by race. Each bar represents a school. The blue color shows the percent of students who are white. You can see that some schools serve primarily white students and that some schools serve primarily students of color.